Inshallah, we are starting a new series for the Sisters-led Ta'aleem. So there's just a wealth of information and topics that the sisters have expressed interest in us presenting on, and it's just not enough time. And so we've had to create series and break down the topics into smaller parts. And so today we're going to start a new series on the mutual rights in Al-Islam. And the purpose of this series is to help us to build stronger relationships between ourselves and our Creator, and then build stronger relationships with the rest of creation, all those that we have to interact with on a regular basis. So this being the first in the series, we're going to kind of go over the objective for just today, but then we're going to take us back a little bit and talk about the topic in a broad sense, and then bring it down to more specific, narrow details and examples that focus specifically on our today's objective. So today's objective, we're going to do a couple things. First, we're going to give you like a vision, as I said, that big picture for what this series on mutual rights in Al-Islam is all about. And then today, only, we're going to focus on defining the relationship between the Creator and the creation. And then we're going to go into identifying some of the actions that we have to take as creation to fulfill our role and confirm Allah's promise. So Allah has made guarantees to us, and He never breaks in His promise. But there are things that we as creation are expected to do to receive Allah's promise. And then we'll go into illustrating prophetic examples of doing even just the basics with excellence. And we'll go into more detail for each of those. So these first few slides are going to focus on the big picture for the whole series. And we're going to start off by simply talking about rights. What are rights? According to Wikipedia, rights are principles of freedom or entitlement. That is, rights are the fundamental normative rules about what is allowed of people or owed to people according to some legal system or some social convention or some ethical theory. So basically this is saying that there are some things that are basic in whichever environment you're in. So there are some norms in your environment, things that are okay and not okay according to the systems that we establish. Human rights are inherent to all human beings. So it does not matter your race, your gender, your socioeconomic status, language, whatever. There's some basic human rights that we're all entitled to. Human rights are not limited to, but they include, of course, the right to life and liberty, to not be persecuted, enslaved, tortured, to be able to have freedom of expression and thoughts and feelings, opinions, and then having the freedom and the right to have work, to have gainful employment, and to receive an education. The one thing that we do want to stress with all of this information in terms of just like the basic understanding of rights is that these things are non-conditional. So it's not, I like you, so I'm going to let you be free. Or I like you, I'm going to educate you. Or I prefer you above another gender or race or class of people. And so now you are going to receive something that no one else can receive. These rights are unconditional, and they're entitled to everyone. Without discrimination. So we're going to get into Islam specifically in terms of the rights that are owed to believers, to other believers, and rights that are owed to non-Muslims or non-believers, two different distinctions in Al-Islam according to Islamic principle. So the Islamic model for human rights is striking in its rigor, its strictness, its specificity. It's striking in its vision, how broad it's able to see the human and the human condition. And the Islamic model for human rights is relevant, is significant in how relevant it is across all times in history. It's something that's not specific to a time or place. Some of the features of our Islamic model for human rights is that these things that we're entitled to, they are a natural result of a broader practice in faith, our deeds, our social behavior that we believe are divinely mandated. So when you're looking at Islam and you're looking at the rights that are given to human beings, the expectations that human beings are expected to uphold, these expectations aren't things that are specific to that person or their condition or their place. And the results of these rights, the outcomes of these, it multiplies. It's tenfold. Like, it's bigger than the actual event. Like, okay, you should allow someone to get an education. But the long-term effect of educating someone is so much greater than just that one person receiving an education. So what Islam is able to see and provide to mankind is bigger than what we can even see for ourselves. And we'll go into more specific details on how this manifests itself. As it states in the Quran, Surah 17, Ayat 90, God commands justice, doing good, and generosity towards relatives, and He forbids what is shameful, blameworthy, and oppressive. He teaches you so that you may take heed. In Islam, there is a connection in that it lays down some rights for all human beings. Every human being has basic human rights simply as a creation of Allah, which should be recognized by everyone. In fact, it is our duty to fulfill these obligations. As the series goes on, we're going to break down the mutual rights in Al-Islam. We'll start off today with talking about our obligations to Allah as our creator and what the natural outcome of that is if we follow those obligations and expectations that He has for us. This will be the only one of the series that only go one way, right? Where there's no reciprocity. It's you are the creation and He is the creator, and this is what you're expected to do, and this is the natural outcome. Whereas the other relationships that we're going to get into, husband and wife, parent and child, and leadership in ummah, there's reciprocity. There are rights that one has and there are rights that the other has. Whereas the creator and creation that we're going to focus on today, you have the slave master, Allah, you have the owner, the creator, and then you have us, the slave. We are the slave of Allah. And this will be unique and different from any of the other relationships that we'll explore throughout the series. So we are going to move now into giving some basic outline for how the relationship between the creator and the creation goes. And we want to be clear that as we've said before, the presenters here and the other ta'aleems that we've presented, we are by no means professing to be experts, right? We are simply servants of Allah, students of Al-Islam, learning all that we can using the resources that Allah has provided in the Quran, Hadith, other texts that are based in that, and presenting the information. The goal is for each of us to then do further research, to learn more about those issues and concerns and facts that we present that are of specific concern to you in your life. So we're by no means attempting to present any fiqh, any specific rulings. We're sharing the information that's available to all of us. And the list is not exhaustive in terms of the resources or even the amount of content. This is just us, tapping the surface of mutual rights in Al-Islam.
Thank you. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum. So my name is Salima, for those who don't know me. And so I'm going to pick up where Baina left off and talk specifically about the rights of Allah over us, and then what His promises are to us in regards to our fulfillment of His rights. Before I get into it, specifically, I just wanted to, in addition to what Baina said, the reason why we're starting here is because when we talk about rights in Islam, between the creation and whatever those relationships are that have rights over each other. In order to have a productive and fruitful conversation about rights, we have to know where those rights are established. And the rights that we owe to others and others owe to us are established by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if we don't have the proper understanding and proper regard of our relationship to Him, then we can't really fully understand what our rights are, and we can't fully discharge those rights in an appropriate way. So this is the reason why we're starting here. Inshallah, the next part of this series, when we do present it, we'll be building from here. So it starts with Allah because He created everything, and then from there we'll build on the relationships that spring out from there. So, for example, the next one will probably be the rights of the man and the wife, because that's the first thing that comes together in an establishment of relationships in the society. So this is why we're starting here. When we want to talk about anything, we have to make sure we're talking about the same things and defining terms. So when we say the Creator, what is it that we mean? And again, you probably know all the information we're going to present here, so this is more of a reminder and maybe another way of looking at it. So forgive us if it seems a little redundant. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines Himself in the Quran in Surah 112, which is Surah Ikhlas, in just 4 ayats. And I'll read the translation for simplicity's sake. He says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. He says, say, He is Allah who is one, Allah the eternal refuge. He neither begets nor is born, nor is there to Him any equivalent. And so what He's telling us here is that He is it. There's nothing like Him. He didn't have any parents. He wasn't born. He's not going to die. He creates everything, and there's nothing comparable to Him. So Allah Himself defines who He is for us. And then in terms of who is the creation, in one of the ayats of Quran, Surah 4, Surah Nisa, ayat 1, it's translated to say, O mankind, fear your Lord, who created you from one soul and created from it its mate, and dispersed for both of them many men and women. And fear Allah, through whom you ask one another in the wombs. Indeed, Allah is ever over you, an observer. So here Allah is telling us how we were created. He created us from a single soul, and then from that single soul, countless men and women were formed. And in this, Allah also establishes the basis for rights in Islam, because He says He created them, and then you ask of Allah on your rights regarding them. So again, it's going back to this concept that the rights in Islam is not established by anyone but Allah. And so when you're looking for rights, or you're dispensing rights to someone else that is owed to them, it's a relationship between you and Allah regarding that other person. And I think that's a very important concept to keep in mind, because as Baina said, rights then they're not transactional. It's not conditional. It's not, well, because you didn't do this, I'm not going to fulfill that right to you, because what you will be held accountable for on the day that we stand before our Creator is what you did, not what the other person didn't do. It's not a transactional. It is an obligation upon you to fulfill that which is within your charge. Okay, so what are the rights of Allah? So in Surah 51, ayats 56 to 58, He establishes what His rights are. And He says in translation, and I did not create the jinn and mankind except to worship me. I do not want from them any provision, nor do I want them to feed me. Indeed, it is Allah who is the continual provider, the firm possessor of strength. So here Allah is telling us in these few short ayats that He created man and jinn for one purpose and one purpose alone, and that is to worship Him exclusively, without condition. That was the sole purpose of what we created. He doesn't need anything from us. He doesn't want anything from us. But even in that, He's showing His mercy. He has ultimate supremacy, ultimate power. But in that, His mercy, He still provides for us. He's a continuous provider. So he's establishing for us